In volume 6, our final volume, I want to teach you the training and sparring drills that you can practice to become a superior knife fighter. The first thing we're going to do is go through quite a number of different training drills that will build the attributes you need to start sparring with a partner. Then I'm going to go into actual sparring drills that you can practice with your training partner to improve your overall knife fighting ability. So let's start training. Before you actually start sparring, I want to give you some training drills that will help you develop the attributes you need to be an effective knife fighter. Before you go out and sparring, I don't want you just whacking away at each other. That won't do you any good. It's just a waste of time. If you don't have the skills already developed, you're not ready to spar. So what I want you to do is to follow along and practice these training drills. What we're going to do is we're going to isolate different aspects of knife sparring so you can work on them in small increments. And when you have them all put together, you're ready to start sparring with your partner. Now, when we're doing these training drills, it's not a contest. No one's the winner, no one's the loser. You're trying to help each other learn. You're trying to develop the attributes of a good knife fighter. So when you're offering targets to your opponent, sometimes make it easy for him to stab your hand or to cut you. Hold your hand still. Offer him your forearm. Offer him your elbow. Extend your leg so that he can cut it. Let your live hand drift out. Give him those openings that we talked about so that he can help recognize the opportunities he has to attack. You want to build his ability as a knife fighter too, because he's going to turn around and do the same thing for you. You're going to help him learn, he's going to help you learn. So sometimes you're going to have to make yourself vulnerable so that he can build his eye-hand coordination and develop his ability to stab a hand that's in motion or to cut a hand in motion. You're going to have to help him learn to recognize openings by exaggerating those openings so that he actually gets it. You know, you might have to actually put your arm like that. Oh, okay, I slashed that. You may have to hold your hand still like this and hold it there for a couple beats, and then he stabs it. Oh yeah, that's a still hand. Okay? Sometimes you're going to move around and you're just going to stand square to him like this. Oh, he's standing square, so he cuts you. So you're going to have to make yourself vulnerable, and you're going to trade off so that you both learn. It's a learning process, and it has to be a cooperative process. Let's train. We're going to start our series of training drills with stabbing attacks on the knife hand. What I want to do is I don't want to overcome you at first. I don't want to give you so many things to defend against that you're not successful. So we're going to isolate just stabbing attacks at the knife hand. One person's going to defend, the other person's going to attack. Then you're going to switch. Now remember, the person that's defending, sometimes I want you to give the attacker a clear opening so he can practice actually making contact. If he misses all the time, he's not going to build the eye-hand coordination he needs. So it's a cooperative thing. You've got to work together to get a lot of benefit out of these training drills. So what I'm going to do is the only target is my knife hand, and Ron's going to attack it by stabbing. Sometimes I'm going to hold it still, and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm going to give him my forearm to stab. Sometimes I'm going to raise my arm high and have him stab that. And sometimes I'm going to show him that it's hard to get those. Just like that. Then I'll go back and I'll attack Ron's hand the same way. Now we're going to isolate cutting and slashing attacks at my knife hand. We're going to do it the same way we did with the stabbing attacks. I'm going to evade sometimes, and sometimes I'm going to make myself vulnerable so Ron can practice his offense. Still hand. exposed elbow, standing square. Just like that. Now, I'm going to go on the offense, and Ron, he's going to evade. Just like that. Sometimes he's going to offer you a live hand. It's going to vary the targets he gives you. Trade off. We spend a lot of time in our training developing our defenses against attacks on our knife hand. I've said again and again, the primary target for your opponent, especially when you're using our basic fighting stance, he has to dispose of your knife before he can come and take your life. So you really need to be good at defending against attacks on your knife hand. So we've got lots of training drills that we use to bring up our defenses and to perfect them. Now we're going to allow both cuts and thrusts at the knife hand, and I want you, when you train now, to use the full gamut of defenses, evasive patterns, circling, fold back, all the things that I've taught you, basic U, lift high, drop low, the full gamut of defenses against cuts and thrusts at your knife hand. I'm going to go about half speed now so that you can see and watch more carefully. See what I mean? That's how I want you to drill it. Use all of your defenses to defeat his attacks, then switch. You attack him. He uses all the defenses. Sometimes you're going to make yourself vulnerable so that he can cut and stab you. Switch off and cooperate. Learn. Because your face is such a vulnerable target, I want you to have a lot of practice in training to defend it. Now, Ron and I are going to demonstrate how you can do this at home with your training partner. I'm leaving my fencing mask off so I can give instruction. Don't you do this at home. I'm breaking my own rule. It's very dangerous. So we're going to go about half speed so that you can see what's going on and I can explain it. But when you practice at home, what we're trying to do is isolate your defense against stabs at your face so that you get used to picking up that incoming knife and reacting very quickly. I want you to get used to defending your face. Most people can't. Make sure you can. Just like that. Sometimes put in your live hand. Get used to using this. Sometimes you won't have the luxury of a long knife. You'll have to use your live hand to win the fight. Now I want to isolate how you can use your live hand to parry off thrusts and stabbing attacks at your face. Earlier when I was teaching you how to use your knife hand defensively, I want to reiterate that you use the flat part of your palm or the flat part of the back of your hand. Try to keep your fingers lined up straight like this. Don't curl them like that because it'll catch on the edges of the blade and cut your fingers off. When you have to make contact with the blade sometimes, you want to hit flat so that you minimize the chance of being cut. I'm not saying you won't be cut because sometimes you will, but you'll minimize the chances of being cut. Same thing with the back of your hand. I'll come out here and have Ron come out here. Now remember, if we can, we want to parry on the wrist. Usually we can't because we're too late. It's a long ways. By the time I get to his wrist, his knife is almost at my face. I have to really see this coming, and I have to reach out a considerable ways in front of my body to parry on his wrist. Sometimes, though, you're going to parry right here on the blade. Remember, always move your head when you parry. Try to actually move your body. Get out of the way of that. Okay? Here's how you can train at home. One person is going to be the attacker, one's going to be the defender. Now remember, these training drills are to isolate different parts of the knife fight so you can work on your attack and your defense. Right now, we're primarily going to work on our defense. So I'm not wearing a fencing mask so I can talk. Don't you do this at home. It's very dangerous. What I want you to do when you see him go is I want you to use your live hand and to redirect that knife. So when he stabs at my face, I want you to step off, stab right at my face. I want you to step off line. Get out of the way. A little higher. Off line. Sometimes you're going to have to get on the blade like that. I want you to practice both. Getting on his hand, on his hand, on his blade, on his blade. A little faster. Now remember, sometimes you want to lift. Sometimes when I see this coming in, I want to lift him here to get in my own shot, wrap that arm, and work him over. So you can parry to the inside, you can parry to the outside, and you can lift. Sometimes you won't be able to move to the right or the left. You'll just move your head back to get out of the way. You'll rock back. Just like with your knife, a lot of times you rock back to get your head out of the way. It's the same thing with your empty hand. Sometimes you'll just rock back. You'll just rock back. Gives you a little bit more time to use your live hand to intercept his knife. Let's continue on with our training drills and keep working with parrying. Now I want to focus on parrying attacks at your torso, your abdomen area, or your chest with your fighting knife. I'm going to have Ron come over. And Ron's going to attack with straight thrusts to my center line. I want you to practice at home by intercepting that straight thrust, getting off, line, move. If you can, you almost want to move first. When you see that knife coming, your foot wants to almost move as fast as your knife does. So your foot moves, gets you out of the way. Your foot moves and gets you out of the way. Now, if you squirt off to the side like this, remember the principle is you're going to have to push in or you're going to have to step back and get your body behind your knife. So anytime you advance this way to parry, you may have to step forward and get your body behind your knife, or you may have to retreat and get your body behind your knife. Remember that. Whenever you're moving, and whenever you're drilling, when you end up, your body needs to be behind your knife. So Ron's going to attack a little higher, up here, and I'm going to parry, just like attacks at the face. Now, again, the best and highest use of the parry is to cut his hand. When he stabs, I want to destroy his hand. If I come this way, I want to destroy his hand. But if you can't, get on his blade. If you're able to get offline, get on his blade, you've got a good opportunity for a quick kill. If you get here, he throws his hand up, take that hand, then kill him. If his hand's in the way, cut it. Come again. Just like that. Always be aware that when you pick up one attack, another may follow. You can get here and you can elbow. You can also get here and pick this up with your other hand and cut him. So you always have to be aware that he may not be finished with his first attack. Sometimes when you're drilling, just for fun, add in a hit from that alive hand after you parry. When you parry your opponent's knife, make him throw and try to hit you. Pick that up. It'll stand you in good stead. This is a good way to practice. One person's the attacker, then the other person's the attacker. Always try to move offline. Get out of the way. Don't stand here like stone. Yeah, sometimes you will. Sometimes you'll just recoil like that because you're taking in a moment of time, you can't do anything. I swear, in the thousands of hours I spent in knife fighting, There's been occasions when I felt my feet were 6 feet deep in concrete. I couldn't move them at all. All I could do is just this and be glad, okay? So I'm not saying you can always do it, but many, many times you can get here. Be anxious to parry his stab. Be hungry to get your defense off and your counterattack in. That's the way you win a knife fight. One of the hardest attacks to defend against with your knife is a cutting or slashing attack at your torso. Attacks that come about waist to abdomen high have historically been really hard to defend against. That's why I think you need to spend a lot of time with your training partner isolating these particular attacks and working on your defense against them. I'm going to show you how to do this. Ron's slowly going to cut at my torso. When you intercept this, here I'm out of position, so I use my live hand. When he cuts forehand, I want you to step to the zero pressure area if you can. That gives you a little bit more time to look at the trajectory of that incoming attack. Don't just stand here and do this. Try to move to the zero pressure area and get a look at it. Now, as you come over here and get a look at that, remember your attention just went here. So he's liable to throw this. So you can come here. You may have to cover with your elbow even if you can't get your knife on there. That's what I love about the different martial arts I've studied, is I've got lots of things at my disposal to protect myself. If I can't get my knife out of the way, I kind of bong. I lift my elbow, I drop my chin underneath my arm to protect it, and I ride that out. I can slide in now and cut him if I want to. So whenever you're defending here, remember that backhand can go too, and that hand can come again. So you have to stay ready. Remember what we talked about, stepping to the zero pressure area. As his arm scribes this arc around here, as you move ahead of that and get here, you have more time to deal with it. When he backhands, go slow. As I step here, the zero pressure area is over here, clear over here. So I'm going to move here and intercept it. Now, it's my experience, and I got this from Dan Inosanto, his help too, that when you have cuts and slashes at your torso, they have to be knocked down. You just can't mildly intercept them. Put some downward pressure on them. Knock those things down. Cut down on that if you can. Knock it down. Take its power away from it. Cut it down. Don't just flimsily slash it, because it may come still through and cut you. You need to put some pressure on it and cut hard, get out of the way and destroy it. Cut hard, get out of the way and destroy it. It really helps you to be successful if you move. Try not to stand here and do this or this, blocking. Blocking is really iffy. Quite often it crashes through like that and cuts you. It crashes through and cuts you. So if you have to block, you may have to use both hands, and I really suggest that. If you're going to block, you might want to use one hand on his wrist and drive your knife into his forearm like that. Reinforce it this way. Practice it. See what problems develop. Work on solutions. I've given you a lot of them right now. Practice it every time you train. Get used to defending your gut pile. You'll be glad you did. Next, we're going to isolate using your live hand, your non-weapon hand, to defend against cuts and stabs at your torso. Sometimes you're going to block. When he cuts at me, I'm going to block. Sometimes, as he cuts backhand, I'm going to cut into him. Sometimes I'm going to steer him out of the way. He cuts backhand, I may intercept that and steer him out of the way and fling him out of the way. It depends on the speed and the trajectory and the energy he gives you, how you're going to defend. So what I want you to do is keep in mind all the defenses I've taught you on how to use your live hand to defend yourself, and use them now and practice. Your training partner is going to cut or stab you. Let's work the cuts first. He's going to cut you and cut you. So now right now I'm using the edge of my hand. I may block. Now when you block like this, you got to put some energy in that. Try not to hit out here, because he may go right through and cut you. You want to get on his wrist if you can. Better yet, use the back of your hand, intercept that, fling it out of the way. When you can, you want to block with the back of your hand, but you can't always pull that off depending on the type of movement that's coming. Some thrusts with an angled wrist, you need to use a straight arm. You need to practice all of your defensive techniques with your live hand. Maybe he cuts backhand and I straight arm it down. maybe cuts forehand, and I straight arm it down. You need to practice all of those. One person will feed, and one person will defend. Now when he stabs, I need to get out of the way. I parry it off. I cut into it. I knock it down and pin it to his thigh, just like that. Remember, you can step on his foot here, then move in and barge him right over like that. Work on all those things. Experiment with it. Have him stab you at angles. You got to play with it. Work with it. Remember, when you're down low here, be cognizant the other hand may come, and you have to deal with it. Always remember, it's not just the knife. He has other weapons he can bring to bear. Play with it. Get good at it. The last training drill I want to teach is the leg replacement drill. I can't emphasize how important it is that you get good at vacating space, moving your foot back, and getting it out of the way. Getting that leg out of the way, making that person miss. You'll use this not just against attacks at your legs, you use a leg replacement to get out of trouble all the time. So it's a good idea to practice it. Here's how I want you to train it with your training partner. One person's going to attack, the other's going to defend. Now, don't just come in here at light speed and start smacking your partner's leg. Beat him at a speed that he can defend against. Give him nice big motions. Exaggerate the motion so that when I attack Ron's leg, he has a good chance to get out of the way. Now make it realistic. Don't cut clear out here. I'm going to penetrate in here. Raise that up a little bit, Ron. I'm going to penetrate this high. If he doesn't move that leg, I'm going to cut it. All right? If he doesn't move that leg, I'm going to cut it. But I'm not going so hard that every third time I hit him in the leg. He won't learn anything like that. So I want you to practice like this. One person's going to attack, the other one's going to defend. So get in 6 or 7 good attacks, then switch off. Now this gets a little wearisome to come in here and jump in here and out. It takes a lot of strength to keep doing that. So give 10 reps each person and then give it a rest. Come back to it or do it the next day. But don't neglect the leg replacement drill. It'll stand you in good stead. If you do this all the time, I promise you, if you stand in front of the mirror and you practice this leg replacement again and again and again, you'll do it instinctively. You'll have conditioned reflexes. When your opponent tries to punch your leg, you're going to vacate that space and you'll counterattack. You'll do it without even noticing it. Make it a conditioned reflex so you'll never notice it. You'll do it so fast, it'll happen easily and instantly. Now we're going to teach you how to spar by using archival footage. We're going to use the skills and abilities you already have, and we're going to break them down into individual blocks, and we're going to teach you how to spar by building block after block until you're engaged in full-out open sparring. Next, we're going to show you how to spar. We're going to have one person attack the hands, and the other person is just going to use evasionary tactics to defend. What we want to do is we want to isolate sparring into individual increments that you can absorb and build on. So you use one increment, and the next increment, and then the next increment, and before you know it, you're fighting full out. And we're going to use archival footage to show you how to learn to spar this way in real time. Sometimes I'll go to the side. Sometimes I'll raise up, sometimes I'll drop underneath. In our next example, both people fighting are free to attack the hands and use any defense they choose. They can use any evasionary tactic they want as well. Watch them and learn. Now we're going to have one person attack with thrust and the other one defends any way he wants. In this next example, one person's going to attack with cuts and slashes and chops, and the other person is going to be free to defend any way that he can. The goal is not to get cut. What we want to do is isolate the cutting and slashing attacks so the defender has a chance to get used to seeing those and defending against them, but without being overwhelmed by a bunch of stabbing attacks as well. We want to break it down into an increment that he can handle. Now we're going to isolate the face as a target. Throughout this presentation, I've been stressing the face as a target and the need to be able to defend it. Now we'll show you how to spar by just isolating the face. So you don't forget about it when you're in full-out sparring. You don't forget the fact that your face is a target and you get used to defending it. And we're going to have you defend it again and again and again until you get really confident at it, and it pops out automatically. It comes out of conditioned reflex. That's what we want to build, and breaking these sparring sessions down into smaller increments is we want to start building your conditioned reflex so that when you're in full-out sparring, you'll have that attribute. You'll be ready to defend your face. In this next sparring illustration, we're going to isolate the legs as a target. One person's going to attack and the other's going to defend. Again, I want to warn you tall guys, you need to get really good at defending attacks at your legs. A lot of people will use an attack at the leg as a change-up. They're going to attack high, 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 and when you think your attention is all about being stabbed in the face, they're going to drop and cut your legs. It's the same thing in boxing. Sometimes you punch a lot of straight punches in a row, jab, jab, cross, and then all of a sudden you go to a wide hook. The guy's narrowed his guard. He thinks you're coming up the middle and you hit him from the side. It's the same thing. When you lead high, high, high and then attack the legs, if you're not used to defending the legs, if you haven't built conditioned reflexes, you're going to get cut, you're going to get knocked down, and you're going to get killed in a knife fight. So you need to practice defending your legs. Here's a good way to train it at home. So far, we've been isolating individual aspects of the fight and individual targets. Now we're going to make it a little more difficult. One person gets to attack any target he wants, and the other person gets to defend. He can attack with cuts, or thrusts, or chops, any attack he wants, but the other person isn't going to counterattack. He's only going to work on his defense. You're going to switch off, practice this at home, spar like this at home before you go full out into sparring, because it'll build your conditioned reflexes. That's what you need when you get into a sparring match. You can't think all the time. Your muscles and your subconscious do the work. Train it, spar it, and learn to live. Now we're going to illustrate full-out open sparring. One person is going to be able to use any attack or defense he wants, and so is the other. They're both going to be equal. They can both attack at will and use any defense they want. So every man's on his own. It's a free-for-all. But keep in mind, when you're sparring, it's not a death match. It's not a match for money. You're not getting paid. You're here to learn. The purpose of sparring is to try things out and to build your reflexes, build your skills, build your abilities, not necessarily prove who's better or who's worse. You want to use sparring as a learning experience. Sometimes when I'm sparring, I'll work just different aspects of my game to improve on them. I'll experiment with new feints. I'll experiment with new defenses. Sometimes I'll make myself vulnerable. I might get cut 5 or 6 times in a row. So lots of times when I'm sparring, if I get cut or stabbed, I'll have my opponent feed me that line again and again and again until I work on my defense. After I've tried that a few times and I'm used to that line, he very seldom ever cuts or stabs me with that technique again. This is how you get the most out of sparring. Use it as a learning experience, not a contest. Sometimes you have to make yourself vulnerable to learn. Get cut and stabbed in here, training and learning, and you won't get cut and stabbed on the street. Practice and get the most out of your sparring sessions. Work with your partner. Be cooperative. Help him to learn, and he'll stick around so you can learn and be a complete knife fighter. This concludes the training we're going to do in this volume. Remember, repetition is your friend. You need conditioned reflexes, and the only way you're going to get them is to practice these techniques thousands and thousands of times. Remember your safety. Always wear a fencing mask when you're training and protect your vision, as no one can replace your eyesight. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.